This video is sponsored by Proton VPN. With every new generation of phones, OnePlus seems to reinvent itself a little. From the original cheap, cheerful, powerful flagships, to the more recent focus on luxurious designs and slick, fast displays. And with these changes, price tags have crept up accordingly. It'd be unfair though to dismiss the newly launched OnePlus 8 Pro as just another expensive Android flagship. While it is the priciest mainline OnePlus phone to date, your $900 gets you more phone than ever before. Plus, if that's too rich for your blood, there's also the standard OnePlus 8, smaller, less specky, but starting at just $699 in the US. These phones do a great job of conveying just how much OnePlus has grown since 2014, so let's dive in and see what they're all about. I'm Alex from Android Central, and this is our review of the OnePlus 8 and OnePlus 8 Pro. So the vanilla OnePlus 8 is just slightly smaller than last year's 7 Pro, while the 8 Pro is just a smidge larger. Both are more boxy than last year's OnePlus phones, but equally it's clear that OnePlus is riffing on the style of the Pro here, as opposed to resurrecting the vanilla OnePlus 7 or 7T design. If you've held a 7 Pro or 7T Pro, you'll be very much at home with the brushed aluminium and matte glass here. And if you're a OnePlus veteran, you'll appreciate many of the design traits, including the iconic alert slider. This year's signature colour for OnePlus is called Glacial Green, which looks phenomenal. It's a bolder colour than the blue hues of last year, and it really makes these phones stand out. If you want something even more ostentatious though, there's also the Interstellar Glow model, which, well, you can see exactly what's going on here. Let's get the core specs out of the way before we go any further. These phones are both every bit as trailblazing as you would expect from OnePlus. The latest Snapdragon 865 processor, up to 256 gigs of storage and 12 gigabytes of RAM, 5G in both models, big expansive screens with just a slight blemish for that front-facing selfie camera. Both have bigger batteries than last year, along with Warp Charge 30T over that trademark red USB cable. And both have the same reliable, fast, in-screen fingerprint sensor and face unlock features. But while the meat and potatoes of both phones are fundamentally the same, the difference with the Pro model this year is the gravy. There are plenty of extras here that look to justify the extra $200 jumping from the OnePlus 8 to the 8 Pro. The Pro is kitted out with OnePlus's slick new 120Hz display, whereas the smaller model has to make do with 90Hz at a lower resolution. The 8 also doesn't have an IP rating for water resistance, compared to the shiny new IP68 badge of the 8 Pro. That means you can use it more confidently around rain, or whatever other liquids you might find yourself in or around. The 8 Pro is also the only model to get OnePlus's fancy new 30-watt wireless warp charge technology, so you get the same quick charging speeds whether you go wired or wireless. However, for all these hardware feature upgrades, there isn't really much difference in the day-to-day experience of using these two phones, besides the fact that one of them fits in the hand a little easier. OnePlus's Oxygen OS software is back and hasn't changed a whole lot since we last saw it in the OnePlus 7T. The biggest user-facing changes include the retirement of the widget shelf on the home screen. You've now got the Google feed over on the leftmost home screen panel, plus there are a few more high-end features like the new turbocharged network mode that lets you speed up your downloads by combining Wi-Fi with your 4G or 5G cellular connection. Oh, and there are some sweet new live wallpapers preloaded too, because of course there are. But overall, this is the same fast, clean Android experience that's won OnePlus so much praise over the years. It's performant, attractive, and of course OnePlus has an excellent track record when it comes to Android platform updates. Right now, OnePlus's software doesn't really need anything more than a few minor tweaks from year to year, and so that's exactly what we see here. What's more, with the debut of that glorious new 120Hz display, Oxygen OS can now upscale video content shot at a lower frame rate to that higher number of FPS, while also upscaling HDR for added picture depth. It's also worth mentioning just how fantastic these screens look in person. In addition to racking up near perfect benchmark scores, OnePlus's 120Hz panel is vibrant, smooth and bright. And the added benefit of a fast refresh rate goes hand in hand with a quicker touch response of 240Hz, making everything feel so much faster. On the standard OnePlus 8, you'll get most of those benefits just at a slightly lower 90Hz. and really 90 is just fine here. You'd have a hard time telling these refresh rates apart even with both phones side by side. And yes, you do have to deal with that hole punch cutout, which will be an eyesore for some people, especially compared to the blemishless front face of the OnePlus 7 Pro. But OnePlus says this new design makes it easier to implement IP68 water resistance, while also freeing up space inside for a larger battery. Speaking of which, you would expect battery life to take a pretty big hit when you're pushing up to 120 frames per second on a regular basis, but in both cases the 8 and 8 Pro hold up pretty well. Even the Pro with around a 4500 mAh battery won't be a multi-day phone for people like me, but I've still been able to get a full day of 16 to 17 hours per charge with around 5 hours of screen on time. It's a decent number, though that's mainly been on Wi-Fi for obvious quarantine-related reasons. The baby OnePlus 8 with its 4300 mAh cell also manages a solid day of use under similar conditions thanks to the lower Full HD Plus resolution and slightly lower refresh rate. And as well as larger batteries, OnePlus actually has a couple of neat software tricks to help you preserve the battery capacity throughout the life of the phone. Smart charging learns how you use your device throughout the course of the day, so it knows what time you normally get up in the morning, and it can anticipate what time you'll need the phone to be fully charged. That in turn means you don't need to charge it as quickly overnight, so you don't need to use the very fastest charging speeds available, which can contribute to battery aging. This works whether you're charging wirelessly or over a cable, though it's worth remembering that in the case of the OnePlus 8 Pro, you'll only get those 30-watt wireless charging speeds to begin with if you use OnePlus's first-party charging pad. Let's be honest, OnePlus phones have rarely excelled when it comes to camera performance out of the box. Usually they're decent to begin with, and there is some improvement with successive software updates, but OnePlus cameras have never really challenged the very best out there. And look, the vanilla OnePlus 8 is not going to change that. This is a $700 phone in a world where $1,200 phones also exist. So instead, the OnePlus 8 includes last year's main camera from the 7 Pro, along with a 16-megapixel f2.2 setup for the ultra-wide camera. This is pretty much a known quantity, and performs reasonably well, especially when combined with the nightscape mode for extra low-light fidelity. Most of the OnePlus 8 camera experience is comparable then with that of the 7 Pro, with one major exception. There's no telephoto zoom here, and in its place you'll find something that's fairly useless, a dedicated macro camera which seems to be there just to make up the numbers. It is a little baffling. So you'll get decent digital zoom results from the OnePlus 8, but anything beyond 3x is a bit of a struggle. Also unsurprising here is solid selfie quality. With a 16-megapixel sensor, small pixels on the lens, and fixed focus, it does a fine job in good lighting, but it can struggle in low light and in close-ups. Unlike the selfie camera of, for example, the Google Pixel 4, you can't use the Nightscape software mode to eke out more detail in nighttime shots, which is a little unfortunate. But the new hotness in terms of camera hardware can be found in the OnePlus 8 Pro. There's an upgraded main camera module behind an f1.7 lens, paired with a new ultra-wide setup and a 3x telephoto, just like the OnePlus 7 Pro. So you're looking at a big improvement in a lot of the places that matter most in a phone camera. The OnePlus 8 Pro has excellent color reproduction and improved dynamic range compared to last year's model, and when it hits, portrait mode shots look incredible. And low light shots, even without the Nightscape mode, come out looking really great. Though unfortunately you still can't use Nightscape with that telephoto lens. In fact, the telephoto is a little bit of a dud all round. It's not exactly bad, but it hasn't improved markedly from the OnePlus 7 Pro, and it lacks the telephoto range of competitors like the Oppo Find X2 and Huawei P40 Pro. Shadows can become crushed easily, and as you'd expect, low light from this camera just isn't great in general. Then there's the somewhat confusing color filter camera, the fourth main shooter in the OnePlus 8 Pro, which is a dedicated 5-megapixel setup specifically to help apply filters to your photo. I'm not convinced this gives noticeably better results than the software filters in every other phone out there, but hey, it's there and it lets OnePlus say they have 4 cameras. Other nitpicks around this camera setup are exactly that, fairly minor complaints. Sometimes faces get smoothed a little bit more than rival flagships. AC's Daniel Bader noticed 1 or 2 instances of skipped frames when shooting 4K videos on his units. Other than that though, it's hard to fault these cameras. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the OnePlus 8 Pro has the best phone camera out there, it clearly doesn't. but the vast majority of people, I think, will be very happy with its photographic capabilities. Whatever you're doing with your new OnePlus 8, you'll want a fast, secure internet connection. So to help protect your connection against snooping and censorship wherever you are, check out this video's sponsor, ProtonVPN. It's brought to you by the folks behind Proton Mail, with the same serious scientific focus on security and speed, based in Switzerland and backed up by some of the world's strongest privacy laws. ProtonVPN is high-speed, open-source, independently audited, and one of the market leaders in the VPN space. Hit the link in the description to download for free, or save 20% when you buy annually. It's interesting to look at the OnePlus 8 and 8 Pro compared to last year's 7 Pro. There's really not much in it in terms of size. So instead of size, the choice between these two mainly comes down to budget and what you want out of a phone. For my money, the regular OnePlus 8 is the less well-defined of the two. Its priorities just seem slightly askew. It has the latest Snapdragon processor, and for some baffling reason 5G as well, but also an underwhelming camera setup and a significant price hike compared to the equivalent phone in 2019, especially when you consider the OnePlus 7 Pro remains on sale and discounted in many places. In essence, it's a $100 premium over last year for more of the same. Depending on your priorities, that may be perfectly fine, but as AC's Andrew Martinek argues in an editorial published today, a cheaper Snapdragon 765 chip and a more fully featured camera setup would probably make more sense. By comparison, I think the OnePlus 8 Pro is much more well-rounded as an overall product. With its $899 starting price in the US, it's clearly going after the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, and doing so with a very competitive design and compelling feature set. With the exception of the anemic telephoto lens, the cameras here can go head-to-head with Samsung, and for a lot of folks the software experience, performance and wireless charging speeds will be wins for OnePlus. So OnePlus is taking the heat to Samsung and many others, but this isn't quite OnePlus becoming just another big corporate-y phone company with yet another expensive Android phone. The 8 Pro in particular is a sign of OnePlus's maturity and competitiveness, and it's well worth your time if you're shopping around any of the big Android flagships. But if you're looking for the best in the mid-tier space, I'd suggest taking a look at last year's 7 Pro before settling for the vanilla OnePlus 8. That's it for now. Be sure to check out our written review on AndroidCentral.com and subscribe here on YouTube for all of our future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.